So we're in this tiny little place called Kardella. Beautiful deep valleys and gullies in Gippsland, to the west of Leongatha. As you can see, very rich cattle, sheep, dairy. I'm not sure Kardella is even a town, but it's on the monument website, but there is no picture of what the memorial is for the Boer War. So it's going to make it difficult to find. You know, it's not like there's shops or something, I don't think. My GPS led me down this little dirt road to a dead end, which must be the heart of Kardella. We need to be on Kardella Fairbanks Road, which I think is this one. It's paved. Hutton's Road. So yeah, without a picture of what we're looking for, it's going to be difficult. What a beautiful little hideaway. Oh, hang on. No, it's just some garden art. Kardella. I was thinking that it was somebody's garden art is a monument. It was shown to me, or I found it myself, but there was in a place called Havelock, there's a an avenue of trees they found, which was a Boer War Avenue of Honour, which has been overgrown for 100 years. They've just rediscovered it. You know, maybe it's something like that around here. Look through this part of Kardella. Might put into my phone Kardella Fairbanks Road, see if it comes up with anything. This is coming out of the town now. There's no shops. I'll see if I can turn around, I think. Right, stop recording. Stop recording. I'll set the GPS to Fairbanks Road, Kardella. The monument website says Kardella Fairbanks Road. That's the only indicator. So maybe if Fairbanks connects with Kardella Road, that gives me an intersection and I can have a look around. But if this becomes Fairbanks Road, then yeah, we're in Stook. Crossing up ahead, horses, folk. Well, a great place to live though if you wanted to country life. You know, it's just gorgeous. It does get cold in Gippsland and it does get wet. But you're probably not getting to see the green, the lush green valleys of Kardella. You know, incredible to think that someone from this area, this little locality, might have gone to South Africa to fight on the veldt, to fight the Boer on the veldt. Incredible. So it's like going to Mars from here. Well, this is what I consider the centre of Kardella. There's a warning sign there for koalas. Right? Watch out for koalas. I'm not sure actually, yeah. I don't think I came down. I think I came from that that junction back there. So my hope is raised again. got to look out. Oh, pottery. No, we don't want a sign for pottery. Very steep hill. Right, stop recording. Stop recording. Okay, so upon further inspection, it turns out that it's a set of trees that are monuments in Kardella to the Boer War. They did that. They named trees after Mafeking or Roberts or Victoria, and so there's no plaque or anything to tell me which the trees are in Kardella, which were planted in probably 1900 or 1902 to remember the events. There was a set of trees actually in the Baptist church in Kyneton. I went and had a look at them. The plaques were long gone, but the trees had been planted. It's just opposite the fire station in Kyneton. The trees are still there, but the plaques with the names Kitchener, Roberts, Mafeking have long been gone. So, you know, I think that's the case of Kardella. But we did see Kardella. I'll keep the camera rolling because we're going to head back now, and we'll hear a reading from The War with Johnny Boer, because I know you guys love that book. The role of the Queenslanders and Victorians with Major H.G. Viles is followed in Toy's second letter, dated the 27th of July 1900, printed in the Perth Morning Herald on the 18th of October 1900. Quote, "We left the men in the firing line at midday, calling for something to do. They were still calling at 2:30. Then Major Viles, his patience exhausted in that long, vain wait for orders, took upon himself a move forward. He, as did his fellow officers, had understood that the force was to have pushed through the valley to the convoy. No big fight had taken place where they stood. The dismounting and laying helplessly in the grass had been inexplicable. More inexplicable still had been the absence of orders to advance, retire, or do something. Had Colonel Airy been shot, he could get no information, pro or con. Get together what men you can, he told his officers, and we'll charge the hill. The Victorians within earshot were told to advance. Some 25 men rose from the grass. 6 fell immediately. The rest ran forward a few paces and were ordered down into the grass again. This brought the West Australians and a troop of Victorians into a line fairly facing the Boers' main position. By a series of short rushes, each rush ending in the line laying down and returning the fire from above, Major Viles got his men up the crest of the hill. Here they received a strong enfilading fire from the Boers on the other hill. It was hot, very hot work, but the men never flinched. They were going to charge with the bayonet that always worked woe in the ranks of the enemy, and they were going to work much woe, and they were happy. "Fix bayonets," said the Major quietly, and a glitter scintillated in a jagged line in the grass. "Now, men, follow me," he said, still quietly, and he started up the east of the slope, walking with his hands pressing his knees, as a man dog-tired mounts a steep flight of stairs. A wild old subaltern ran forward, his cheeks high, red with excitement. "Come on, lads," he yelled. "Let's give the bastards hell." "I believe he's drunk," said a private. "Are you commanding the regiment, or am I?" said the Major, and the subaltern slowed down. Then came the "Charge!" The rifles above answered the order with a confused splutter. The men ran forward. There was no wild cheering, no frantic rush. The men were tired, panting. They ran slowly, their feet slipping back as stones gave way beneath their boots. Then they disappeared over the sangars near the crest. They found no Boers in the first trenches. They only saw hastily retreating Boers along the south of the ridge. That confused splutter that had answered the charge was the enemy's parting shot. Our men gave a parting shot in return and tried to decide whether they were glad or not. Their bayonets were still unsmirched with gore. Then the party on the hilltop were electrified from news from below. "They're talking of surrendering to the Boers down there, sir," gasped a man who had just climbed the hill. A laugh ran round the trenches, but the laugh was constrained. The trooper was in deadly earnest. Major Vials was smiling as he turned to look down the valley. A man near the house was holding up a flattering token of submission. The smile died and the Major swore. He looked round the kopje. His men now in the trenches of the Boers' main position could be trusted to hold it indefinitely. The enemy's fire was slackening elsewhere on the hills. Something was happening somewhere that had decided the Boers on a retreat. What was this madness about surrendering? After snapping out a few hasty orders, Major Vials stalked down the slope. I shall never forget the scene in the farmhouse 5 minutes later. On the floor lay half a dozen wounded men. The room was uncomfortably crowded with troopers, some leaning listlessly on their rifles, others tending their prostrate comrades. At the farther end, Colonel Airy stood against a wall talking with Colonel Holdsworth. Major Vials entered suddenly, walking fast. His Indian-scorched face was a study in anger and contempt. He is a hard man, cruelly hard at times, and he looks it. He brushed the troopers roughly aside, swiftly picked up his way among the wounded, and strode directly up to Colonel Airy and saluted. "Hello, Vials, how are you?" the little man had said, seeing him coming. "I haven't surrendered, sir," blurted out the Major. "Didn't ask you if you had," replied the Colonel, a trifle nervously. "I asked you how you were." "Well, thank you, but I've got the Boers' main position, the kopje, and I can hold it till further orders." "What? Have you really?" the commander of the force ejaculated in surprise. "Then get as many men together as you can and hold it, Vials. There'll be no surrender." "Thank you, sir," said the Major simply, as he saluted and turned on his heel. He smiled as he left the room, but the smile wasn't pleasant to see. It was now 3:30. A light fire was coming from the western kopje, and there was still a line of Victorians and Queenslanders laying in the grass near the road, all angry at this talk of surrender they'd heard. Had they lain there 7 hours just to surrender in the end? Hardly. They were going to fight their way back to Rustenburg when the darkness came, orders or no orders. Barely had Major Vials reached the top of the eastern kopje again when a messenger presented him with a note from the Colonel. One can afford to smile at it now. The note ordered the Major to surrender. How the latter managed, I don't know, but the messenger made no fewer than 3 trips to and from that kopje with notes to and from the Major. I know in his last note Vials requested that if the surrender had to be, his men might march out with the honours of war. Colonel Airy's reply to this was, I understand, a curt, peremptory intimation that orders from superior officers must be obeyed. The Major had sparred for wind as long as he could. Now he was fairly cornered. Orders must be obeyed. The men had watched the little interlude with feverish anxiety. They saw by their commander's face that the worst had come. A torrent of imprecations, hysterical laughter, expressions of derision and contempt burst from the ranks. The Major raised his eyes from that note of finality, and he looked at his men. Tears, yes, tears, actual tears glistened on his sun-browned cheeks. There was a catch in his voice as he said, "It's no use, men. I've been ordered to surrender. Come, fall in." Barely 50% of the men who had charged the hill stepped into their places. The rest had vanished. Meanwhile, at the house, a source of some confusion. The firing had ceased on the hills. Groups of troopers here, there, and everywhere, wildly, angrily, discussed the surrender. To a man they were against it. All had some ammunition left, and in all was the confidence they could fight their way back to Rustenburg in the darkness. A few there and then set out for the town on their own. No pen could picture the scene. Some of the men stamped on the ground in perfect ecstasy of anger. Others rushed hither and thither, not knowing what they did. hysterically calling all they met blanky liars and blanky cowards. Many sneaked off to the koppie whereon stood Vial's men, and some sat on the ground and cried like schoolgirls. From inside the house, mingling with the groans of the wounded, were cries from pain-racked lips. "For God's sake, sir, don't let them surrender." One Victorian with a shattered right arm rushed to the door, waving a rifle with his left, and shouted, "No surrender!" Though a minute before he could utter no word in his agony, the officers with solemn, rage-flushed faces talked low in twos and threes. One I saw whose temper got the mastery, Lieutenant Hanley of the Queenslanders. "Put down that rag," he shouted to a trooper who waved a white flag above his head.